It's 24 minutes just before 12 o'clock. If you have just joined us, welcome to the show. It's 938 Culture Capital with myself, Kia Boya. We're getting into a segment that we call Mind Your Money, and we have conversations around finance. It could be personal finance or finance updates that you definitely need to know about. And today we are going to be chatting about tax. Most South Africans know that when you owe SARS and fail to pay on time, interest starts accumulating almost immediately. But what far fewer people know, however, is that there are circumstances where SARS may actually owe you interest, whether it's a delayed refund, an overpayment of tax, or successful disputes against an assessment. Taxpayers may have legal rights that often go unclaimed simply because they aren't widely understood. So how does SARS know, or how do you know if SARS owes you interest? What are the rules, the deadlines, and the common mistakes that taxpayers make when navigating the system? And to help us unpack this conversation, we are joined by Lethabo Maditsi, who is a tax legal specialist at Latita Africa. Lethabo, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kia, for having me.
So let's have a conversation around, taxpayers being owed. Many people are familiar with SARS charging interest on late payments, but not with the idea that SARS can owe interest to taxpayers. Why is this aspect of tax law so often overlooked?
Thank you. So I think the thing is that people are just so used to SARS charging them interest that when it's situations in their favor, they often do not think that it is even possible for SARS to owe them interest, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the starting point is simple, right? If a person is deprived of the use of their money, interest is meant to compensate them for that loss. Mm-hmm. And this principle is reflected in tax legislation as well. Okay. SARS does not only charge interest. SARS can sometimes be required to pay interest where it has held money that should have properly been refunded to a taxpayer.
Okay. And how common is it for SARS to actually owe taxpayers interest?
So there are many situations where SARS may owe a taxpayer interest. And one of the most common situations, it would be where SARS was supposed to pay out a refund to a taxpayer, but did not do so timelessly. The Tax Administration Act says that SARS is mandated to refund a taxpayer within 21 business days. Mm-hmm. So then interest will start running after the 21 business days have lapsed. So those are the more common situations that SARS would have to pay interest to a taxpayer. Another situation, I believe you've mentioned it at the beginning, is where a taxpayer successfully disputes an assessment. Okay. So SARS would then issue an additional assessment. The taxpayer would file an objection or appeal against it, and then when that assessment is reduced, this would result in a refund. So the taxpayer would then have to check if SARS has indeed paid interest on that, and they could usually see this if they have a look at their statement of account.
Okay.
Yes. And another situation is where a taxpayer pays more than the assessed amount. Mm-hmm. So historically, interest would run from the date SARS received the excess amount until the refund has been paid. But there's been an amendment in tax legislation, particularly section 1873, subsection H, which says where there has been an erroneous payment, the effective date is 30 days after the payment has been made. So essentially, this new amendment to the law does give SARS 30 days, a 30-day grace period before interest can start running on that overpayment. So it only happens in situations where there has been an overpayment, but with refunds, SARS is mandated to pay a refund within 21 days. So taxpayers would have to first assert themselves whether is interest being charged on overpayment or is it interest being charged on a late refund payment by SARS.
Okay. And for individuals who have recently received a tax refund, what should they be looking out for to determine whether interest was included and correctly calculated?
So the first thing that they should look out for is to request a statement of account. So you could usually request this on e-filing, and then where there has been a credit to the taxpayer's profile, they need to check whether SARS has included some interest. So it's usually a separate line item on the statement of account. When there's an overpayment, it will say interest on overpayment of tax, and where the taxpayer owes SARS money, it does indicate where that interest has been charged on late payment. So the statement of account would be the first step, the first starting point for taxpayers to check if SARS has indeed applied interest to it. And I think SARS is using the prime rate to calculate the interest, which I think it's about 11.75% at the current time now. Yeah.
And if a taxpayer believes that SARS has failed to pay interest that is due, what steps do they then take to ensure that they actually do have this money back, and what documentation should they have ready?
So, in a case where a taxpayer has successfully objected against an assessment and that objection resulted in a refund, and where they see that there's a little bit of an issue, SARS hasn't applied the interest, they can then use the appeal stage, which is to file an appeal on the objection and state to SARS that SARS has not adequately calculated the interest on this dispute, and we are requesting that SARS does so. So you could usually just send a letter to SARS. So you would go on e-filing and then submit an appeal against that assessment, and then you attach your covering letter as well as supporting documents that could be calculations that are done from the effective date that interest was supposed to be paid.
Okay, you keep highlighting specific important deadlines. You mentioned the 30 days and the 21 days. What are the critical time frames taxpayers need to know in order to avoid losing a valid claim?
Yes, so there are various time periods. So 30 days is when you have overpaid to SARS. Then they have 30 days for SARS. SARS has 30 days from the date on which you have made that overpayment to check whether they cannot offset this amount against any other taxes that you might owe them. Perhaps it could be admin penalties. So in the case of refunds, once SARS has finalized that assessment, they would have to pay that refund within 21 days. So a taxpayer typically has about 3 years,
okay,
so that they can follow up on interest that is due to be paid to them. Anything after 3 years, then that assessment would have since prescribed, and then they would lose any recourse to claim that interest from SARS.
Okay. And what practical advice would you give South Africans during tax season to ensure that they're not overlooking money that may be rightfully owed to them by SARS?
I think my message to South Africans would obviously to monitor those SARS notices and check the correspondence that SARS is going to give you. So if you submit your assessment, have a look. Has SARS accepted your assessment? Has it been selected for verification? Look at the results of that assessment. Do I have money that is due to me? If you indeed have money that is due to you, calculate the days from which you have received that assessment. So if you had received your assessment today on the 1st of June, your SARS must pay that refund by the 22nd of June. So anything after the 21 days, then interest is payable to you, and you must also check on your statement of account, has SARS indeed credited that interest to you. If that is in order, then you should allow SARS to process that refund and you should receive it. But if the amount reflected on your bank account versus the amount that's reflected on the statement of account, there's discrepancies, then you could follow up. I think the best way would be to contact SARS at the contact center, or you should visit a SARS branch if you're unrepresented by a tax practitioner.
Okay. Or alternatively, we could just call Latita Africa and for them to help us with all of that.
Yes, definitely.
Lethabo, thank you so much for enlightening us and helping us better understand when SARS may be required to pay interest to taxpayers, and why it's important to also know our rights as taxpayers. Thank you so much for engaging us on this conversation.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a fantastic day further.
Thank you.
Bye.